Well,
You were born in Marion, right?
It's a strange story. You know, my mom she's a Riddle. She's from Spruce Pine.
Mm-hmm.
But she got married in Tennessee to my dad over in Irving, Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
And he worked at Pottery over there. And they had 4 kids. The oldest one was about 5-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
She had 4 kids, one on the way. And I was the one on the way. I was a baby.
Yeah.
And he got drafted in the Army with 4 kids and one on the way. And he could have gone. Said hardship deal and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But he chose to go. So he went to basic AIT, straight to Germany, and about 3 weeks later, he's gone. They just woke up one morning and they're just getting bombarded, and before that day is over, there's over half of their company killed.
Wow.
So she was there by herself with 4 kids and getting ready to have another one before too long.
And you were the one that was on the way.
Yeah, so I never did see her dad.
Mm.
And, her dad came over, picked her up, because they knew she was having a lot of problems over there. So he came and picked her up, brought her back over here, and that's why I was born in Marion. The rest of them was born over in Irving, Tennessee.
Mm.
So I guess
And so her dad lived here?
he did.
Your
The oldest
grandfather?
fellow run a shoe shop down Spruce Pine for years.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
Which shoe shop was that?
Riddle Shoe Shop, and
Oh,
down
yeah.
on Lower Street.
Yeah.
And where Tom Westall store used to be, right beside of it.
Yeah.
Next to the theater.
Yes, yeah. Okay.
You two, little to figure out all that.
And what's funny is we've been over a lot of this on because we've talked to so many people recalling all this other stuff. Well, I've learned more about Spruce Pine and stuff and where stuff was doing this than I ever would have learned anywhere else.
Well, anyway, I guess that's I started out as a veteran before I was ever born. I guess looking back on some of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Sure.
But it's something you don't forget. And then 21 years later, I was drafted in the Army, and we spent a year in Kansas training combat training. Then went to Vietnam.
What was your childhood like?
My what?
Your childhood.
Well, it is there. Well, I'll tell you what. You know, you get raised up without a dad. They say it's different, but I had a mom. I had one more mama. It was just you wouldn't beat her.
Yeah.
And she made things. She if a church door was open, we went to. She took us there.
Mm-hmm.
And just like all kids, we got up and thought we were smarter than everybody else and got away from it. But we thank goodness and thank God, the good Lord, we got all back to it and everything. But,
Yeah.
we didn't have any money. We didn't have any idea we was poor. There just wasn't no money.
A lot of people around here didn't have any idea they were poor
Yeah.
until.
Yeah.
We was very normal as far as that goes. But no, I just I knew I didn't have a dad, but I had a mom. I was kind of made up for it, you know. But
Yeah.
I always knew. I always loved my dad, even though I didn't know him, because I was really glad he cared enough about us and cared enough about this country to go fight for us.
Absolutely.
And when you go in the military, before they ever let you put a uniform or anything on, you got to raise your right hand and take an oath to God and country that you'll go anywhere in the world, anytime you're asked to go, and do whatever it takes to protect this country.
Mm-hmm.
And he done that. So did everybody else that went in the military, and some of them got to that level, and some of them were lucky enough not to. You know? But I guess that's one reason, seeing what we did in Vietnam and going through all that kind of, as an infantry medic over there, you see a lot of stuff you kind of can't unsee. You know?
Sure.
So it kind of sticks with you the best you can do.
And you said you were drafted, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Was there anybody from here that you knew that went with you?
Yeah, there's several people. Couple, and I don't know my name sometimes. So
Right.
Don't ask me about names, but yeah, there's about 5 or 6 of us from here. Mike Grindstaff he passed away several years back. He a little old feller. Me and him was good people. Me and him finished school together. He's the only feller from here I seen while I was in Vietnam, and he is in the same base camp as us. He was in and out, and everything, but they let us get together every time he come back in.
It sounds like that made a real impression on you, because Josh, he was showing me when I went out to the plant to let him follow me out here. He's started doing like some CNC memorial stuff for veterans and things like that.
Yeah.
And that seems to be always a thing that it's been real important.
Well, it has. It still is, and probably always will be. But we started making those freedom lanterns a good while back, and we made them to sell. You know, we're busy, so you got to make a little money to stay there. And we did sell some. We didn't push them, but we sold some of them, and the reaction really shocked the soup out of me. I had no idea people would like them the way they did.
Yeah.
But you know, all this veteran suicide business.
Yeah.
About 20 some a day.
I know.
Every day we live.
I know.
Commit suicide.
Yep.
And I've talked to some of them families. I've met a lot of people doing this kind of stuff, and I've talked to some of them families, and they're every one of them the same story.
Sure.
You know, they truly believe nobody cares and nobody appreciates them or nobody respects them, and they just give up,
Yeah.
shoot themselves or whatever.
Well, and there's a lot of, I mean, man, you come back from a war zone, the amount of PTSD
Yeah.
is, I really think, and we've talked a lot about how we have a mental health crisis in this country, but I mean, it affects veterans tenfold because of what they witness overseas. I mean, I could not imagine.
Well, you see a lot more than you ever think you'd see.
Sure,
And,
sure.
I mean, it ain't all blood and guts and all that shooting people
Right.
every day. I went skiing up the Saigon River one time. You talk about a mud hole. Now, that's
Oh, wow.
Water skiing?
Yeah. With some Marines, we took them.
Wow.
I was always begging for medicine and bandages and everything. And
Yeah.
them old boys, they lived like kings when they was in camp, but they wasn't in camp much.
Mm-hmm.
And they went out. I'd helped them any way I could. We run across a bunch of them in Saigon. We was down there trying to pick up supplies, medical supplies, and we just dropped them off and got to know them boys pretty good. And they just took me. They was right there on the Saigon River, made a little beach out of it.
Wow.
That's one of the days of the year. That wasn't every day occurrence.
Right,
either,
right.
You know, but yeah, it's different, and you can't explain it. You don't hear many of them talking a lot about it because if you hadn't been there, you can't explain it.
No, you don't. I've noticed that. Like, you don't hear a lot of veterans talk about what they see or what they witness over there.
Well, it seems like especially Vietnam is one. You know, I have several family members that were in Vietnam, and you know, I've heard more about World War II from my grandfather than I did from Vietnam veterans.
So that's just one of those deals you
Sure.
go
Yeah.
through with, you know.
What was it like coming back? You know, you mentioned, you know, that some of these people just truly believe that nobody cares. What was it like coming back from Vietnam? I mean, I know there was a big anti-war push, and
It wasn't good. I can tell you that. We came back in. We rode ship over there 22 days. That was the most miserable 22
Oh, my
days.
gosh.
We had KP every other day, the whole trip over there, and it stunk. I mean, it stunk high heaven and all that. But when we came back, we'd been over there and seen what you see, and I mean, you see, being a medic especially, you see things that you really, truly wish you hadn't seen. But we left over there one day, and all that stuff was going on, and we flew back into California, and they took us in this big old building to process out. They wouldn't let us wear a uniform out there.
Oh, wow.
We didn't know why. I mean, we didn't know what this mess was going on. And there's a great old big pile of clothes out there. I didn't know what it was, but it's a pile of clothes. And I mean a pile, not stacked or anything.
Right.
They said, go out there and pick you something else. We walked out there looking like a bunch of monkeys.
and that was because they didn't want you to be identified as a
They
soldier.
didn't want us going through the airport with a uniform on. Because they done all kinds of things to you.
Gosh.
They didn't do anything to me and a couple of fellas I was with at that time, but if looks could have killed, they'd have killed off the rest.
Yeah.
You know?
Isn't that so sad? Like, I mean, I understand completely people who are against war and want to protest wars, but to focus that energy on the combatants, I mean, the troops that come home, that's
And especially
ridiculous.
We had no earthly idea all that mess.
Sure.
We didn't know people hated us and everything.
Well, you didn't have the internet like you have now, where you can get on your phone and see what everybody's thinking in real time.
We didn't even have a phone. Anyway, but it was a weird situation. Now, Spruce Pine wasn't that way when I got here this year, but it's just over. I mean, you're back now. There wasn't no conversation about it much at all. So,
gosh, that's crazy.
But nobody around here give me any kind of problem.
Right. Well, I guess that's the beauty of small town America.
But I had a family
Yeah.
to come back to,
Yeah.
and that kind of stuff. And so many of them boys didn't. And so many of
Were you married at the time?
No.
No.
Yeah, well, thank goodness I wasn't. I've seen some of them poor boys. You talk about Dear John letters.
Oh, for sure.
All the people, I've seen boys commit suicide over them letters.
Sure.
And that is a problem that persists even today. It's so deployment is so rough on not only the person but the family
Yeah,
as
it's
well.
brutal.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
tough, yeah.
And you were there in Vietnam for a full year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, after Vietnam, tell me what happened. What do you start doing?
There's a lot of stuff you don't want to know what happened. A lot of stuff I don't know what. I had no earthly idea, not any idea what to do. I just wasn't. I didn't know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I just kind of lingered around. I was down at Marion. I come through Marion one day and I stopped at a little where Caroline Tire used to be, the blue building.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know anything about Caroline Tire. I knew Brad Reagan owned it. That's about all.
Right.
So I stopped at that little old hamburger joint there and got me a drink, something to eat, and I was sitting there eating, and all of a sudden this fella got to beating on my window and hollered at me, it's David McAllister. And I rolled the window down, he got in, and he had a bunch of food in his hand. Me and him sat there and ate dinner, and he said, where are you working at? And I said, I ain't working anywhere. And I didn't know where to go to look for a job, because I didn't know how to do anything.
Right.
He said, well, I want you to come to work with us over here. He was working over at Caroline Tire. I said, man, I don't know how to do
Right.
much anything. Right. And then all of a sudden, this other fella walked out and come over and got him something to eat and headed back. And David hollered at him. He's the manager, Bob Ason. You remember Bob Ason?
Yeah.
And they kept on. But I finally walked over there with them, and I was hurried to get out of there. And they just kind of dared me to come to work. About all. I didn't know how to do anything like that.
Right.
And I finally said, well, that's on a Friday. And he said, you said you be here Monday morning. So for some dumb reason, I got up and went on down there Monday morning. And from the very first day I was there, I liked it. I liked it very well. That's where I met Alvin.
Yeah.
I never met Alvin.
So that's where you met Alvin.
Yeah.
What
So
they
he
have
was-
you doing there? I'm sorry.
Oh, he is a delivery man. He is a maintenance. He could repair. He could fix anything. He wasn't smart.
Whereas you didn't have any skills, he had all the skills, right?
He could fix anything, and
Yeah.
he just a good fellow is what he was. Me and him, after we got to know each other, we delivered a lot together and done a lot of talking.
So that's where the whole relationship with Alvin began.
Yeah.
Was there?
And he's the one that kept talking to me about going into business. He said, we can do something on our own here.
Yeah.
He's going to sell appliances, and he's going to fix them, and all, which he did. He kept on. Finally, I said, hey, when do you want to do that? He said, when you grow up. He said, you got a little growing up you got to do.
And how old were you at the time?
I was about 22, 23, about 22.
Right. So early 20s. Yeah.
It don't matter how old you are, if you ain't grown up, you ain't grown up.
Right. That's the truth.
But finally, he's very nice about it, but I could tell he meant it.
Right.
He just patted me on the shoulder and said, when you grow up, we'll be fine.
Right.
But he was one good man, I know that, sharp as a tack.
Yeah.
And finally, somehow or another, I met Donna. She come in the store to buy something. And I guess that's what grew me up. She just,
Really.
you know, I wouldn't trade that situation.
Right.
with it.
Sure.
But that's, he finally come to me one day. Me and her got married after a little while, and he come to me just a little while after, about that time, and he said, I believe you're grown up now. He said, I believe I'm ready. So we started down in that shell station, down below Grass Creek Church.
Yeah.
Really. That one that's right there right on the road.
Yeah, where the mess is now.
Yeah.
All the trailers and everything, but that's where we started in business, and we put a bunch of used appliances in there, and just widgets, whatever we see get in there to sell, we put it in there. And then Scott Manil's dad had a stroke real bad, and Scott was really wanting to get out of his store at Membro and go take care of his dad.
Mm-hmm.
So they kept on wanting us to move out there. And I hated to move because we just had started. I didn't.
Right. Right.
But somehow or another, we dumb enough to try it. So we moved out there, and that's kind of.
And the store at Minpro, remind me, where is that now? Is that right below the old plant there?
It's right there on the right-hand side of the bypass. You know, where you go up the mountain to the mines?
Yes.
That building, they've made a weird-looking deal out of it.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay, all right.
That
So right
wasn't on
there.
there, it is out there.
Right.
I think they're apartments now or something.
Yeah, I think so. There's something anyway, but that's, we went ahead and moved out there. So it gave us a lot of room. We could move into other stuff. We was pumping gas and cutting chickens, and but we made a living on bologna sandwiches out there on them miners up on the hill.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I'm sure.
I bet we sell 100 sandwiches a day, and then
Wow.
those old boys, they're just like me and you know, there's workers and the macho boys, you know, and they had appliances and stuff in their house, tires up just like everybody else is, and they hated like the dickens to have their only Saturday off and have to go to the store and shop with their wife about buying a stove, refrigerator, or something like that. Just think about it. They had more macho things to do.
Right.
But they'd come down, sit down, and eat. We'd stop and eat with them a lot of times, you know,
Yeah.
and shoot the bull. They knew how we could fix a lot of things. So if something tore up at their house, they'd ask if he could go out and he would. And if they wanted to buy one or something, they didn't mind to ask their wife to come out there after work and.
Right.
I mean, they felt comfortable dealing out there. We
Right.
sold more appliances than anybody in town did for 4 years in a row
Yeah.
because nobody else had service people.
Right.
But that's kind of how we got wound up. And then here come a fella wanting to sell Buck stoves to us and Carol Butler.
Carol, yeah.
So I want to ask. I want to stick on that for just 1 second. So Carol Buckner was. Do I understand this correctly? That he was the first person to put a blower in a wood stove.
Mm-hmm.
That's what his?
Yeah, and back in the fireplace. That's what sold that stove. He took a Franklin fireplace basically
Yeah.
and put another skin around the outside of it and put a fan on the back so it'd blow through it. And you could back it up in the fireplace and get it out of the middle of your floor. And that really, Jimmy Carter put one in the White House. He sure did.
Wow.
So take us through the beginnings of the Carol Buckner.
Oh, no, that took 4 days. He passed away about 2 weeks ago.
Ah.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know he was still alive.
Oh, yeah. Carol, he's crazier than a bat, but he's sharp. I thought the world of him.
Yeah.
He's good to me. I'd rather talk about something else than Buck Stoves.
Well, Buck Stove's a big part of this community.
Yeah, but I'm not there anymore. So
Yeah, I know that. So just jumping back to now, what's it like being out of it after all this? We can go back and revisit a little bit and do the abbreviated version.
Oh, it's good to be out of it. I enjoyed that. I love to work out there. I just like to work.
Right.
Trying to make things happen and everything. We didn't plan any of that. It just,
Right.
one thing led to another. We
Just all happened like that.
crazy enough to.
Yeah, listening to the podcast, that was a common theme that I threw out. It seems like everything you've done, it's all kind of happened by accident.
Well, it did. You know, first time I ever met Carol, he come in there. He was a salesman. Used cars couldn't have held him alive. he could sell. You just had to like him. You know.
Yeah.
He's full of bulls. He could be, but he's kind of fellow you just kind of like.
Right.
Well, he came in there that first time, and he took me out there and he had a stove on the back of his truck. He was wanting to show me this and show me that. And I like the stove, but I thought to myself, well, we can't do this because we got a little bit of hardware, we got a little bit of furniture, we got a little
right.
groceries, and this, that, and the other. And I just never. He said that stove sold for $475 at that time. It's about $3,000 or better now.
Right.
And he wanted to charge me $425 for it. Well, you could have made $50, but
Right.
and at that time that was a lot of money. To tell you the
Sure.
truth.
Sure.
But the money I just didn't figure anybody buy it. To tell you the honest truth.
Right.
And I was real busy that day, so finally at last he just wouldn't give up, and I wrote down the 4 stores in town, the 4 furniture stores and appliance stores, and give him their name and wrote it on a piece of paper. And I said, Carol, if you go up there, and I told him where most of them were. I said, if you go up there and talk to them fellas, you can sucker one of them fellas into taking this thing from you. And that's exactly, and he finally took it and left.
Right.
And I never dreamed I'd ever see him again, tell you the
Yeah.
truth. I didn't think anything about it. And he come back, it's about a week and a half later. You know, there's a little loose gravel in the front of the store around that deep curve out there.
Yes. Still to this day.
Yeah, and I sitting there behind the cash register ringing some lunch up for somebody. And Mama standing there, she come out and worked with us out there a good while. And I heard some gravel sliding out there, and this truck pulled in right in front of the gas tanks, and he come in there, and he seen me there, and he just reached in and grabbed me. He said, "Come, I mean, you need to talk." He said, "Come back here." And I didn't know what he wanted. He just the way he grabbed me, it was kind of funny. And I asked Mama if she'd take over that cash register deal. So everybody staring at us, and we walked back toward the back of the building. And we went back there and sat down at a little old table. He'd look at me, and then he'd look away, and then he'd look back at me. He said, "Son, you're going to have to take this thing. Nobody else will have it."
Oh, God.
See him been to all the other places.
He said it's pitiful. I just started laughing. I said, "Let's go unload it, Kevin."
Right.
So we bought that stove, and that's how we got. But I mean, it started in a hurry. It brought people in the store we had never seen before. But we'd sold a ton of stoves in the first 30 days, and it shocked us to no end.
Was it part of the reason, you know, just that was when the gas crisis was
Oh
going
yeah,
on and all that?
you could. There's a lot of times there you could only buy gas by your tag on your car, even days
Right.
and odd days.
Really?
Yeah.
Which affected heating fuel and everything
Oh, yeah.
else too, right? So people were looking for an alternate.
And that's when Jim Carter was president. And
Yeah.
After a little while, we was into that stuff. After a little while, he put one up in the White House up there.
Right.
I kind of doubt it's up there right now.
Right.
he sure put her up there. They had a lot of crazy things happening. That
Right.
kind of stuff.
So it was just the right thing at the right time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, how did you and Alvin get into making them?
Well, that's another long story. I had to go to Asheville and pick stoves up. I'd pick 6 at a time up on the pickup. And me and Carol, every time I go over there, if he was around, he'd want to go eat about dinner. So we just go out and we got to know each other. And Carol
Right.
was, me and Carol were pretty good friends at that time.
Yeah.
And one thing led to another, and it started growing. And I mean, it grew. He had 3 plants in Asheville, and he couldn't keep up at all.
With the demand.
But I could get stoves when I went over there because they lined up. You couldn't. I mean, it's hard to get a stove over there, but I could get them because I found out they didn't like beating that stack on the top. You had to get your head in that stove and beat around. You
Right.
come out there and you just shot.
Right.
all of it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Them boys didn't like putting motors on them, and there's 2 or 3. You had to drill holes in both sides and put bolts in them. They hated those jobs. So they'd make a stove up to that point and stack it. They had stoves all over the place in there, but you could none of them for sale.
Right.
And I was talking to them and kind of listened to them a little bit, and I said, "Well, I'll do that." And I said, get 6 of them. I said, "If you load 6 of them on my truck, I'll do my own, and I'll do 6 for you while you're doing that." Well, it tickled them to death. And they thought I knew how to do everything, and I didn't know how to do nothing but stick my head in there and kind of beat and bang around for a while.
Yeah.
But even Carol thought I could do more than I could do.
Right.
But then it grew, and it grew in a hurry. And Sears Roebuck come after him. They offered him a ton of money for that company. And he talked to me about it a time or two, and he said, "I don't know about that deal." And I said, "Carol, that's a lot of money, man." He said, "I know, but I don't know." And
Was that the men in ties he didn't trust?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. He
Mate.
called me one day and said, "I want you ain't coming over here, are you?" And I said, "Yeah, I can." He said, Don't come to the building, just park out in the parking lot." And he said, "I see you, I'll be on now."
Right.
So I went over. I didn't know what he was after. I knew Sears had been talking to him, but that's all.
Right.
So I went in there and parked and sat there just a minute or two, and here he come out that door, and he wasn't running, but he sure wasn't walking slow. He's coming, had a little briefcase under his arm, and he got in that truck, and he said, get out of here right now." I thought he was going to get shot. I didn't know what was going on. and I just left and we went out toward West Murray and stopped at the Arby's out there.
Mm-hmm.
And he's so nervous, I just went in and got us something to eat and come back.
Right.
He sat there in the truck and ate. And he wouldn't. He kept saying, "I don't trust him, boys. I don't trust." This is more necktie boys.
Necktie boy.
I said, "Carol, I'm glad I don't wear a necktie." Yeah, and he's serious about it. And he finally, he didn't know, he was nervous, and he had all. I said, "Carol, take the deal and give me half the money, and I promise you I'll help take care of it for a long time." And I was joking with him.
Right.
And he finally looked over at me and he said, "Can you weld?" Well, I knew Alvin could, but I knew I couldn't.
Right.
I'd never been around to weld. And I said, "Well, I can, or I can get it done." And he said, "I'll tell you what, if you'll help me make these stoves, we'll just forget this deal." And that's
Do
really
it.
how I got started with it. But we didn't try to do that.
Right. So you started doing out of the back of the store?
It's a mess out there.
And that point, so eventually that grew into the plant out there, right?
Well, it got to we just couldn't handle it out there. It was
Yeah.
bigger than we knew what to do with. So that the old skating rink at Rice Creek,
Mm-hmm.
they put it up for sale. They shut it down, and Jimmy Cox, he put it up for sale. Now Jimmy knew Jimmy pretty good. So I went out there and talked to him. We wound up buying that building, and then Bill Hudson come and kind of built an addition on the back of it there
Right.
for us. But that building, we got production up pretty good right there, but not near what it needed to be. And
Did he still have the asphalt production facilities?
oh yeah,
Yeah.
he was wide open. All three plants over there.
Mhm.
He was doing everything he could, but the demand is you
Was
couldn't
just
make
crazy.
There's no way you could have made enough if you had two or
Right.
three more plants.
And you weren't competing. It wasn't competing with any foreign brands and stuff at that point. It was all, everything was all buy
The only
American.
competitor we had is Fisher Stove, and the Fisher Stove was a really good stove.
Yeah.
But the problem they had, they couldn't put a motor on it, and they couldn't put it back in the fireplace. It's strictly a radiant stove.
Right.
So that's we had the way upper hand and didn't even try to, you know. It's just-
Right.
And I got to know them Fisher people. They're good people. They're from Virginia, but that's just the nature of their city. They had a really good stove, but it's a radiant heat, which is good. But that fan is
So he
shiny.
patented that fan pretty quickly, and that was his baby.
Yeah.
It's wild.
How in the world had nobody thought about
That's
that until then?
yeah. Well, man,
Well, I guess he just tried it and it worked.
I wonder how many people put fans behind their stove
Oh, it's untailed.
before the whole time.
Just a oscillating fan. What-
Yeah.
But it wasn't effective, you know.
Right, sure.
Goodness gracious. Well, okay, so does this take us up? Does that pretty much take us up to the beginning of the 80s and
Oh, Lord, no.
Pinebridge and all that?
Charles Cannon called me one morning. You know Charles.
Yeah.
And I was on my way to Ohio to a distributor meeting with Buck Stove. And by this time, we was in that blue building out there.
Right.
That we just sold to Uniman. And we was running about 500-600 stoves a week at that time. And I mean, it'd grown. The demand, you just could never meet the demand. It was
Right.
there. And I was on my way up there to a bunch of distributors to get together. Charles called me and he said, "I really need to talk to you. I don't know if I'd come down by there before we went to work." And I said, "I'm going to Ohio today, Charles." He said, "Look, come by just a few minutes if you don't care. You're down at Chevrolet Place."
Mm.
So I went down there and he come out of the building and he seen me pull in. He said, "Jump in here just a minute." And then we got in his truck and he headed down and said, "Where are we going?" And he kept driving, and I had thought nothing about that place over there. Went to school there.
Right.
But that's the last I thought of it. It was a dump. I mean,
How long had it sat there at that
7
point?
years empty, and it's there wasn't no window and it wasn't busted. The floors was caved in the upper building. It was a total disaster. Is what it was.
Wow.
And we climbed over, walked on dirt some, climbed back up, and finally got it. The auditorium is pretty good shape in the upper building. And he said, "I just want to show you something in here." I had no idea what he was after. And we went in and sat down, and he said, "Sit down there in that chair." We sat down in the auditorium, and them folded chairs he used to have.
Right.
we sat there, he just kind of looked, he said, well, what do you think? I said, well, I think you're crazy, man. What if we do? I got to go to Ohio.
Right.
He, he, he said, well, let me tell you something. He said, we had a board meeting. You know, they've been having them turkey bowls trying to raise money to build a football stadium out there at Mitchell High.
Right.
And they'd tried it for 2 or 3 years and hadn't raised near the
So were they still playing football at the old Harris?
Yeah.
Okay.
And they're trying to build that stadium out there at the other place.
Yeah.
And they hadn't raised even any relation to the kind of money they needed and everything. He said, we had a meeting last night with the town board, the county commissioners, and the board of education. We decided to sell the school to raise money to finish that stuff. He told me how much they had to have to do that. He said, that's what we're going to sell the school for. I said, well, that's good. And I figured he's just after donations on. I figured he's
Right.
He said, and we voted to sell it, and we voted to sell it to you. He said, you have to buy it.
Oh, gosh.
That's exactly how we come across that.
Voluntold to buy school.
And I said, so what in the world would I do with something like this? And he said, I don't know, but you'll figure out something. And I said, well, I'll have to think about this. He said, no, we got to do it today. Thanks a million, Charles. So anyway, we sat there for close to an hour, and he just wouldn't get up and leave. He said, you got to do this. And I said, well, Charles, you don't understand. So we went up behind it that day. And, you know, I never went back over there for over 6 months. I about forgot about it, to tell you the truth. And then we was working so late at the plant, and it was in the wintertime, and I was wore out. Well, everybody out there is wore out. Because, you couldn't get enough help to do, and it was just, it's wild times, I'll tell you that. And I was so tired. We'd work at 9, 10 o'clock at night, every night just about, sometimes later. And it was in the wintertime, and I started going over there and just killing time before I went to go unwind a little bit before I went. Right. And you know, they used to, you don't remember it, but they used to have steps going up to that, to the hotel, you know, to the school. Mm-hmm. And I'd get up there and they had a screen wire, mesh gate. You couldn't get inside, but I'd go up there and I just lay down, I just lay there. And one night I was laying there and the snow woke me up and beat me in the face. But I was just about that tired. And I said, man, I hate to have something like this and not do something with it. And we just started drawing pictures and thinking, and that's another long, long story, but that's how that started.
Right.
That ain't really the normal way it started.
Right. Well, I think a hotel makes complete sense.
Yeah, I do too.
Because, you didn't have anything around here like that back then, did you? Well, the Baker Motel, I guess, right?
That's it.
That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Was there any, other than just the fact that the building suited it, was there any other?
To do with the building?
Yeah, to do the hotel?
Not really. It wouldn't fit anything else, I don't think.
Right.
But the thing, too, I kept thinking about, this town really ain't got much of nothing in it, to be quite honest. If you think back, it didn't, because you wasn't there at that time hardly, but there wasn't nothing to do or anything else. And I don't know why in the world we come up with a Coliseum. I don't know. I just want thought we'd put something in it, give something, people something to do.
Right.
Know? And we didn't know exactly what we was going to put in there. We just started doing this and doing that, and then somebody said something about an ice rink or something. The one in Boone is about to shut down. There's a small one up there.
Okay.
And there's just some conversation. I got to thinking about that. So if we build one, let's just build a nice one, And then I searched around a bit and got the dimensions of a hockey rink in case anything like it. And during you talk and you listen and somehow or another in some of them conversations, Rick Dudley, and I didn't know Rick Dudley from Adam. You know who he is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he came up to see me. We hadn't near finished that building. But
for those watching who don't know who Rick Dudley is, could you?
He owned the Winston-Salem hockey team.
Right.
He'd played for about 14 years.
Right.
He could whoop anybody and everybody, and did most of them. And back in those days, that's what hockey is all about.
Yeah, he was just freshly retired, basically. Yeah.
And he'd bought that team down in Winston, and they's doing very well down there. So, but they needed apparently some other people in that league. I didn't know what a league was.
Right.
So he came up to see me one day, and I just got to know Rick. He come up several times, and he said, "If you're going to do this, you ought to, He gave me some pretty good ideas about dressing rooms and this, that, and that."
Right.
And he said, "You need to put a team in here." And I said, "My team in here?" I said, "Buck Stowe boys don't know how to ice skate."
Right.
So one thing led to another. He just kept on. He said, "We're going to have a league meeting down in Winston at a certain time." He said, "I'd like you to come down to that." And just to be nice to Rick, I thought I'd go. And we got down there, and they had that all set up. We bought that team for $5,000. And you can't buy that. You couldn't buy a team now for $500,000.
No, not even in the band.
Gosh, you can't buy a car for $5,000 now,
Right.
let alone a hockey team.
Right.
And one thing led to another. We put that old hockey team in there, and it worked out. There's some wild times during that time.
One thing that really stood out for me when I was listening to that is it was just so funny to hear them trying to explain to a bunch of mountain folk how hockey even works.
Right.
You had to teach them because nobody. And so, is it true the first time you'd ever seen a hockey game was when the Bucks played their first game?
Yeah, I had never seen a hockey game before.
Wow.
I didn't know what it was. But
Right.
I found out real quick.
Right.
Was there a lot of fights that first game?
I guess, yeah.
You're like, what have I gotten
Oh, they
into?
got indoctrinated pretty quick.
Right.
Yeah, that was an interesting time. I guess everybody enjoyed it more than I did. I did not enjoy it, but I was so busy running here and running there. I didn't. If I'd had time to mess with it and knew what I was doing, it'd been a lot different. I guess.
Sure.
But how it made it on its own, and it did kind of. Because
Yeah.
I didn't know what to do with that thing.
Well, I told you, when I contacted you, obviously, my father and you have a long history together.
Oh yeah.
So my dad.
Mike thought I was crazy.
Right. I think he might be the crazy one, but
Well, he is.
but one thing that I told you is that I'd heard these stories from Dad for the longest time, and I thought to myself, they've got to be embellished because Dad loves to tell stories and embellish, But to hear you tell, especially the story about the Way International and that, what was his name?
Dr.
Doctor,
Warville.
yeah,
Dr. Warville.
Yeah.
that was wild.
That is one of the wildest stories I ever. So can you take us through that again? I know that was kind of happening right along the same time. It sounded like when the hockey team was coming up. What in the world? And how did you take us through the whole thing and how you ended up acquiring the company and all that stuff?
Well, Carroll, we had a contract finally at last because he wouldn't pay anybody hard. He surrounded himself with the wrong people. Is what he done.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't that he was sorry it wouldn't pay. It's just
Right.
the company he had. The people they let it go and let it go. He allowed that to happen. But somewhere in the middle of all that, he got connected with the Way out in Colorado. He had a plant out in Colorado, and his boys was out there. And that's how through some of that kind of stuff is how he got connected with it. And he got connected, and they seen he had the money, and they wanted Buck Stowe real bad because they knew what they could do with it.
Right.
They just demanded people buy them. They had members. They's gonna let 50,000 of their members demand that they buy one stove a year. They didn't care what they done with it.
Was he in the organization or just?
Carroll was. Yeah.
Carroll was, right.
Oh yeah.
And it sounded like that the Way kind of targeted people like that,
They
right?
did.
Like a lot of cultish
and I
stuff.
didn't know anything about them, but I knew it couldn't have been too good a thing. And Carroll pretty much lost the company there for a while. And the bank came to us, and we took it over under his proxy for an amount of time. And the Way had done a lot of everything they could to kind of help break it because they wanted to be the ones to take it over. They hadn't planned on me being in there, and I hadn't planned on me being in there. So they didn't kind of take a liking to me
Sure.
too much. So I'd be over there when we took it over at that time. I'd work 2 weeks over there. I'd be over there at 7 in the morning till 11 at night, 2 straight weeks. And I was killed. And I'd leave over there about 11 at night and drive home. It's right under the interstate up there, and I'd pull out and get on the interstate, and these cars kept following me. And then they kept getting closer. This, that, and the other, you know. And then one night they passed me, and hollering, screaming, and slinging their arms at me, and all this kind of stuff. They never did hit my car, but they come so close to it, you know. It's really, it's really weird. They done it 2 or 3 times. And then I went in over there one morning, and there's a letter in the mailbox over there from some of them. Of course, they didn't sign it or nothing.
Right.
One boy did sign it. And he was talking about it. We had Claudia at that time. Andy wasn't around at that time, but they was talking about they'd really hate to see something happen to my wife and my daughter. And it had a lot of stuff in there with it. And I thought to myself, this ain't gonna work.
Right.
And the only way I know to deal with that is hit it head on.
Sure.
And you had all kinds of stories about them folks, people disappearing. They kill people.
Yeah.
Whether they did or whether they didn't, I sure got a lot of credit for killing people.
Right.
And I don't know. They just disappeared.
You're right.
But they had people in high places. They had a lot of clout. They had a lot of money, a lot. So there's a fellow that worked over there that was a lawyer for him. They said he had got out of it, but he's lying to the team. Everybody knew he was, but me and him worked together pretty good. And I went in that morning and showed him that letter, and I said, Scott, call up there and tell Dr. Warwell I need a meeting with him. But we're going to stop this mess. And he said, he going to meet with you. And I said, yeah, he will too. There's on about 100 and some acre farm up there. You had gated and all that stuff. You wouldn't have walked in there.
In Ohio, right?
Yeah. Dayton, Ohio. So he kept saying that he won't meet with you. I said, give me his number. If you're not going to call him, I will, but I intend to get with him.
Right.
And that's probably the dumbest thing I ever done. You know, you get shot doing that kind of stuff. And finally, last he called and he come back in there where I was. He said he can't meet with you tomorrow. He said he's in New Hampshire on a hunting trip. I said, I don't care where he's at, Scott. That plane will go toward Ohio or it'll go toward up here. It don't matter, he'll meet us. Yeah. But I mean to meet with him tomorrow.
Right.
So he went back in there, in a few minutes, a little while, he come back in there and he said he'd meet you at 9 o'clock in the morning. You got 1 hour. I said, that's all I need. And I went home, got some clothes and turned around and come back. I said, you go with me, won't you, Scott? I said, you know where everything's at? He said, well, yeah, I'll go with you. And about the time we was getting ready to leave, I come back, about the time we was getting ready to leave, going to the airport. So used to, you could do stuff like that.
Right.
About that time, Carol Butler walked in with a suitcase in his hand, and he'd been somewhere just coming back in.
Right.
And he said, where are you boys going? And I said, we're going up to see Dr. Warble. You want to go? And him and Scott, they looked at each other. He said, yeah, I'll go. He said. Yeah. So we just headed out and got us a room that night. And the next morning we got up and drove out. Oh, it's a beautiful place. I mean, they no rinky-dink about them.
Right.
So we went in there. And you want to hear all this mess?
Yes.
Yeah.
I love it. It's an amazing story.
Well, it ain't something you go around bragging about.
Right. Sure.
No.
But we went in and rode. They let us through the gate. Of course, Scott, if he hadn't been with us, they probably wouldn't have. And we rode around, come to this barn back there, and there's a big old Trailways bus made into, one of these real nice buses.
Right.
And we pulled up there, and there's a fella standing outside, and there's a couple of horses there next to the fence. And we stood there and talked to him just a second. All of a sudden, this fella come out of the bus. It's Dr. Warble. How you doing? And he's one of these real deep talking fellas.
Right.
Dark rim glasses on.
Right.
They fit the bill.
Right. Oh, yeah.
So he invited us to come on in. Well, we went in and sit down there. And he reminded me again. He said, "You got 1 hour." And I said, "That's all. I don't need all that much." And I started to pull that letter out and show it to him. And he said, "Well, wait just a minute." He said, "We just got a new video I'd like to show you." The video's 22 minutes, so
It's eating into your time.
Wow.
so he showed that. And back in those days, it's hard to get a good film. You know,
Sure.
You didn't have the equipment you got now.
Right.
So that played, and it's just. I mean, it was very nice. If you're into that kind of bull, it's just, you'd have thought he was the highest fella in the world. You know.
Right.
He certainly thought he did.
Oh,
Yeah.
Or he
it
was.
was all about Dr. Warble and what he had done and all this great stuff. And we watched it and got through with it, and Carol and Scott, I thought they was going to bow down to him. They just how great that was. And I sitting up there toward the front. And he come right up there to me, and he looked right down. He was standing up, and I said, he looked down and said, "What did you think of that film?" I said, "I thought that was great." I said, "Whoever put it together done a heck of a job." I said, "Man, didn't know it better think he was God Jr." And why I said that, I ain't got a clue. But it just popped out. So here he come at me. I didn't know if I was going to. He had that finger right down my nose. Said, "I'll tell you right now, I'm the same as Jesus Christ. We're equal to him." And the man says something like that to me, something's going to happen. So I just kind of eased out from under him and got out and went out and talked to the horses for a while. And I figured, what's next? I don't have a clue,
Right.
but you know, I ain't going to deal with this situation. So finally, he came out there, and he walked out. When he did, I stood there kind of fiddling where the horses were and talking to the other fella. He just shooting the bull. And he walked up. As soon as he started walking up to me, that other fella kind of disappeared. And he walked up and put his hand on my shoulder and started to say something. I just jerked away. I said, "Well, I don't want to get close." I said, "A man say what you said in there. Lightning's going to strike this place. I don't want to be close to you." I said, "You got to know better than this." And I said, "I'll come up here and see you in 5 minutes about the max I need." And I showed him that letter, and I said, "I'm not afraid of you boys. And I'm tired of this foolishness. I want this stopped." And he started, "Wait a minute. I said, "No, sir, man." I said, you're training these people, and there's hundreds of people up there. I said, "You're training these people every day of your life how to go straight to hell. And you could work less than half as hard as you're working right now and teach them how to go to heaven." And I said, "I don't know if that place down there in the bottom is going to be hot enough for you, because you don't do stuff like this and get away with it, partner."
Right.
And you know what? He started crying and started talking, and he said, "Let me just explain." I said, "Explain something different than what you started, because I ain't going to listen to you." He used to be a Methodist preacher. He started out as a Methodist pastor.
Right.
And man, we kept talking and kept talking. And I thought, you don't need to start in a fist fight. You know, he got the message, and he told me point blank. He said, you won't be bothered no more." And I hadn't been since that day. He said, "Let me show you around this place." I said, "I've seen about all I need to see." No, he said, "No, I'm not joking." He said, "I'd really love to show you around and show you what we do up here." So he kept on, and he was very nice about it. So I said, "Well, let's go." I said, I had an hour, and I didn't. I'm finished. He said, "No, don't worry about the time." We spent all day with him up there.
Wow.
It's the only time in my life I've ever been in a limousine. We got in the back of his limousine and rode around, showed me that. He said, "Would you eat lunch with me?" He said, "They've got it ready." And they had a great big lunchroom in there. And we pulled up, you could hear people in there eating. You could hear the forks and the plates and all that kind of stuff. And that fella driving got out and run up and hollered something. I don't know what he hollered, but they cleared that building. And I mean, we walked through there, and there's, high feet stuff hadn't even been started eating and everything. They wouldn't let them come back in till we got through there.
Wow.
And we went back there into a private dining area, and there's a table for 6 there, but 4 of us sat down. We didn't order. That's one of the best steaks I ever eaten in my life. I mean, they had the food. So they brought them out there and set all 4 of them down. Me and Dr. Worrell was sitting on this side, and Carol Scott is over there. Well, they brought that food, and they started getting their forks, getting ready to eat them out and everything. I just sat there. You don't know.
I don't trust that. Yeah.
No. So he got to looking over at me, and they was eating. He wasn't, but those two boys were. And he looked at me and he said, "You got a problem with that?" I said, "I don't know." I said, "You ever heard anything about this fellow named Nehemiah?"
The King's Taste Test.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He said, "Yes, I have." And he said, "Would you like to trade?" So he swapped plates. I said, "Well, okay."
Nice.
And so we laughed about that while we was up there. But he's in fact, he came down. He promised me fair and square that he'd change that deal. I said, "Doc, all I got to do is just start telling him the truth, and to stop his foolishness and everything." But I said, I'll tell you once more, I don't know if they make a place hot enough for this, what you're doing. And I hate to see that for anybody. So he promised me fair and square he'd change it. In fact, he came to see me a couple of times after that. He came to Carroll's and called him. I know he wouldn't ever come to plant. I went out and sat in his bus and talked to him a little bit. But he died. He ain't come back. He died, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, he ain't come back yet.
No, he's not. I wonder, is that still? Are they still an organization?
Oh yeah, they're really
Really?
big. Yeah,
Wow.
That's what a story.
it's scary.
I don't know if you realize it, Robert, but that is one of the
That is one of the craziest stories I've ever heard.
yeah.
Well, you can't make that stuff up.
No,
I
I believe
know
every
you
word of it. I know it's
And like
true.
I
It
said,
has-
my dad had relayed that story to me several times before, and I thought to myself, I was like, Dad has to be embellishing it. And it was word for word, just like you
That's
told
crazy.
it. I mean, do you think at that point it was just, because I mean, obviously that takes a lot of confidence, Robert. Do you think it was your faith? Or do you think it was just the fact that you were fed up? Or so tired you couldn't stand it?
Because I didn't have enough sense to be scared.
Yeah.
I probably trembled after I got away from it, but it never dawned on me that there's danger to it. I just knew it had to stop.
Right.
Well, when you're defending your family, that's
Yeah,
somewhat
you don't really
business in
think
your
about a
family.
whole lot of that.
No.
Goodness gracious. So after that, what I wanted to ask too, what was Carol's whole demeanor during all that?
Oh, he was very nice about things.
Right.
Yeah, he's sitting right there. We done a lot of the talking.
Right.
He didn't argue. Me and him didn't talk about the way much. He knew I didn't have much use for it.
Right.
Mhm.
So I never got an argument. Me and Carol didn't argue. We just we thought a lot of each other, and we respected each other, but we totally disagreed on things, so we just didn't talk about it.
Sure.
No, Carol's a good man. He just got himself in the more he get out of it. So, and I hope he's okay, because he grew up as a Baptist.
Mm-hmm.
And that don't make you perfect by no stretch, but it's,
Right.
it ain't the way.
Yeah, that's the truth. That's just crazy. So then the company, it wasn't long after that you got full control of it because Carol defaulted, right?
There's a long story.
Right.
That you don't hear all
Right.
this. You can bypass. I mean, it lasted 51 years, and how it done it, I don't. Just the grace of God. That's all. But
Yeah.
it sure wasn't me. I know that. We just didn't give up, but we didn't have no sense to give up. If we'd had any sense, we'd quit a long time before that.
It's so funny, like how you and I both have worked in that hotel. That was my first job out of high school.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, I worked at the hotel when Claudia ran it. Yeah, in 2003. I went to work up there on night shift in the
And
front desk.
That whole thing. I mean, I grew up in that place.
Yeah.
We lived in there at one point. That's
Yeah.
when I was born in
You
that
lived in a
house.
little apartment there, didn't you?
Yes, yeah. Mom and Dad had the little apartment in there, and then I remember I'd come home from school, throw my book bag down, grab my hockey skates, and there I went.
Yep.
And that was, I mean, I wasn't even really, old enough to. I was born in '85, so I mean, I was just a baby when the hockey
still
team
just
was
a
there.
Same. Yeah.
But yeah, still at heart at least. But it's like that whole thing. Even then, like I was so deeply involved in the place that it was like it was real to me.
Well, if you think back, anytime that brought more more economy to this town than anything's ever come
Sure.
through this town.
Oh man, my entire childhood, my grandmother would take us and drop us off every day during the summer at Pinebridge, and we spent every day there.
And I
Every
tried
day.
to run the buck stove plant in the meantime.
That's wild.
Running all that. And so what do you, I wonder what you think, does it make you, what's it like to know that there's a YMCA going back in there?
I don't want nothing to do with the YMCA.
Oh, I know you don't, but I just wonder do you think that's a step in the right direction?
Well, it could be. I don't know. John Boyd thinks it is, and I think a lot of John Boyd.
Mhm.
But and he's asked me my opinion, but I told him I wouldn't give it 10 cents for nothing. But that's my personal experience. With
Right.
I just think they're sorry. But I know all of them are not. They couldn't.
Right. Yeah.
Sure.
We just happen to have some screwballs down here.
Right.
I think, and I don't appreciate a little bit how they dealt with that deal over there.
Right.
And I wouldn't deal with them again, but I'm not going to fight John.
So the YMCA, the first time it was in there, that was not a good experience.
Very, very sorry experience, to tell you the truth. There's some stories there that I'd just rather not get into.
Sure.
But for what John's trying to do, I really think Malin overall will do real good. And I hope for the sake of the community they do.
I do too. We need something like that. I worry about our town, our community, and its future. I mean, I really do. I know a lot of times on this show I'm the voice of pessimism, and I don't mean to be, but I do have a real concern about the future of the economy of this town.
It don't have to be that way. It wasn't
I
like
know.
before Pinebridge came, but you go to Burnsville right now, and Burnsville's absolutely wide
They're
open.
booming. They're booming.
There's something amiss.
100%.
I think you call it leadership is what I think
Yeah.
it does.
Yeah.
And I don't even know who the town board is right now. And I'm not got a lot of interest, but I love this town. I'm not interested in moving to Burnsville for the simple reason they're doing good.
Sure.
Well, Robert, I wonder, just because you have a unique perspective in this, owning a company, we've talked a lot. I mean, it was real. I tell you what was very real to me, and I've said this ad nauseum on here, and you got evidence of it sitting right here. I remember when NAFTA and CAFTA happened, and it was, even though I was, the mid 90s,
Yeah,
so I was
we were
10,
young,
12 years old
middle
when
school.
all that stuff started happening. I remember my friends, that their parents worked up here, and all of a sudden they were wearing the Abercrombie and Fitch, and we were all going to the mall every weekend, and then all of a sudden they weren't able to go to the mall on the weekends, and they weren't able to afford the stuff, and they started wearing their brothers and sisters' hand-me-downs and things. What was that whole time like when all those plants moved out, and how did that affect this community in your estimation, just in your words?
Well, it didn't help you. And people like to panic, to tell you the truth. We didn't know what to do out there, but it didn't affect us because we had a unique industry. And the people are going to heat their house. And Buck Stove, anybody can talk about it good or bad or any way they want to, but it's the best stove on the market. Even most of our competitors will tell you that. And that was because I'd done such a good job with the employees out there. They cared. And they knew we wasn't going to let bad stuff go out. And you're going to please everybody. We got over 1 million stoves out in the field, all 50 states, and there were a few more things like that. But when you got a product like that you don't have to brag about it. It does its own stuff.
It sells itself.
It kind of helped guided us through that stuff, and that's when all them people left, and the people in town is panicking and everything. We got a lot of credit for doing things, and we bought that plant out there at that time.
Yeah,
And
you
I
bought the
tried
Ethan
very,
Allen
very
plant.
hard not to buy that plant. I did. I didn't money to buy that plant. Jack Dobson wore me out to go out there. And finally, at last, we fumbled around and bought it, and people took that as a major move for us, which I guess in hindsight it was a good move for us. But
Remind
we
me,
didn't plan that.
Buck Stove doesn't have any other plants other than it's all coming from here now. You just kind of consolidated all in one, huh?
Yeah. You had a plant in Colorado, and a plant in Virginia, and 3 plants in Asheville and ours.
Yeah.
We just you couldn't deal with it. They wasn't productive.
Right.
A lot of kinfolk and that kind of stuff.
Right.
But we just decided we got no production. It leveled itself out. We could do all right out here.
What's the word when a product becomes synonymous with something you do every day, like a Google search, like you Google something or you use a Kleenex, even though the Kleenex is not, it's a tissue paper, but the brand, a Kleenex. I feel like Buck Stove is like that. Like I heard of Buck Stove my whole life, and I just come to associate a Buck Stove as a wood stove.
Yeah, honestly.
Well, a lot of people think they got a buck stove. A lot of people do,
Yeah.
and they don't.
But
lot of
there's a
people sell
term for
stoves and
that.
eat buck stoves, and they don't.
Right.
Oh, we've been through all that kind of foolishness and
Right.
everything. But
Yeah.
you just keep your nose clean, do the best you can, tell
Yeah.
people the truth, and treat you
Sure.
folks halfway decent. They're gonna do okay. I hope the folks out there now do great. I don't know what's gonna happen. I don't know if they do either, but I hope it does well. It's too good for this town.
Right.
And it's too good for this country not to.
What was the process, or what was your thought process in finally getting out of it, finally selling it?
You just have to know it's time, and I don't know. There's a lot to go through on that kind of stuff.
Right.
I didn't know what to do when I got out because I ain't never done anything except work. And Donna didn't want me sitting around the house all day doing nothing, and I didn't want to either. So, that's why we're doing a lot of the things we're doing out there right now.
Right.
Glenn Raven's got that building rented, and this other boy's got the bottom part of that building rented. It's two buildings. In one.
Yeah.
And Glenn Raven, they've been awful good to me. They allowed us to use that office we was in, and we held back just a small portion of the building, and he allowed us to do. But they're very good to deal with, very good.
Are they doing anything in there?
Warehousing.
Oh, just warehousing stuff. Yeah, I got you.
They don't man it at all. They just send a truck over and load or unload and leave.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Robert, do you think it's possible to bring back American manufacturing?
Not as cross as the type people in Washington still there. They got to change. That has to change.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
I don't want to get into politics. I'm not a politician, but it's obvious that ain't working.
Sure.
I can't understand why the American people don't see a whole lot of that kind of stuff.
They don't, and until we stop, and again, I won't get into politics, but until we stop electing people who see their position being elected into a food trough rather than to serve the people.
Well, that's what's going on.
Yeah.
Right now there's so much greed and so much hate.
Oh,
You don't hear either side of the politicians talk anymore without the other side's crazy. The other side's going to kill this country. The other side's going to do.
Right.
They don't say what they're going to do.
No.
No, that's why I really can't give up on that Freedom Lantern, because I've seen that thing. I've seen it change too many people. I've seen it save a man's life one time, just about.
And how did the Freedom Lantern stuff come around originally?
Well, we just got to we was doing a little bit of a lantern deal with that deal down here in town.
Yeah, the perfect
We just
Christmas
got
tree.
to drawing
Are they
together.
oil lanterns or?
We put little candles in them.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
But we build them. We got one that's put "God Bless America" and a few little things on it. Wrote a little note and put in it for the veterans. And we done it 100% to sale. Cause I like to make money as good as anybody else does.
Sure.
And they ain't cheap.
Right.
Those things.
Sure.
Yeah.
We done them fairly inexpensive because we just filtered it in with everything else we was doing.
Right.
Out there, so you didn't notice the price of it. But you
Right.
start from scratch, and that's all you do. It's quite expensive.
Oh gosh.
Sure.
Yeah.
But we made them. We was going to sell them to all the veterans. We got to looking and talking to this and another. There's 20 million of veterans in this country. That's a lot. That's a big part of the
That is
population.
a lot of veterans.
And we decided, well, that's a pretty good little market.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we made them. We was going to sell them. We didn't go hog wild with them. We just put them on our website and a few little, and we selling them. We sold quite a few of them. Not big, not any kind of big number, but we
Right.
did sell quite a few. We just enjoyed them. And I give this and that and the one. I just listened to them and everything, and I thought they need to have something, so we let them have it. And then one day, there's a couple of men walked in the plant out there. Older fellow, he's 90-some-year-old. He's on a cane. And his son, he's buying something in there. He left and went on in the showroom. And I was in the back of the building somewhere, and they called me, and they said, there's a fellow up here you probably ought to come talk to. And he's a World War II veteran.
Oh,
You don't see many of them anymore.
Yeah,
No.
no.
So I went out there he's out in the lobby, and I went out there and sat down and started talking. We had just the best conversation. We're about nothing,
Right.
just talking. And he's the kind of fellow that liked to talk, you know.
Right.
When he found out I was in Vietnam and he was in World War II, that gave us a lot to talk about, you know.
Right.
So we sat there and talked, just had a good time. There was one of them lantern displays sitting there. And he kept looking at it. And a time or two, he asked me, he said, "What is that?" And I said, "That's just a little lantern we deal with here." And I didn't say much anything about it, and sure didn't try to sell it to him.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't even thinking about selling
Right.
it to him. And we started talking again in a few minutes. He said, "What is that? What is that thing all about?" I said, "It's just a little lantern." And I still didn't say anything about it. Well, finally, his son, they got through, and his son come back through there, and we was all standing there talking a little bit, and they started to leave. He said, "I want to buy that lantern." I said, "Well, I'll be glad to sell it to you." And that's probably the dumbest thing I ever said. But anyway, he got to reach in every pocket he had, and he didn't have any money. He didn't have half the money to buy that lantern. And he kept looking over at his son. His son kept looking over at me. He got a little weird there, you know. And finally, his son bought it for him. And he was what money he had, he meant to put into it.
Mm-hmm.
And they walked out. I thanked him, and they walked out, and I just stand there holding that money. And they walked out and crossed, you know where the parking lot is. He parked on the other side of the parking lot, and 2 or 3 times he stopped on the way out there, and he had that under his arm right there. And he kept pointing at it, and I couldn't hear what they're saying, but he kept talking about it. And they got to the truck over there, and his son opened the door for him. And they stood there and talked, and he'd look down at that lantern every now and then. And I thought to myself, this ain't right. And the more I stood there and watched that stuff, I had every intention getting out there and giving that man didn't need to pay for that lantern. And somebody at the other office door opened the door and hollered something, come here just a minute if you don't care or something. And I looked around and started talking in just a second, and I turned back around, and I had my hand on the door to go out there, and there they went out the driveway. And I'd like to tell you I'd give him his money back, but I couldn't catch him, and I ain't seen him yet to this day. But I come back in and laid that on. I said, I don't want more money from veterans. They've paid the price, and they don't. And that's why I said I'm intent to try my best to do something with them lanterns. And that's the only reason I'm making them little plaques like you've seen out there today, just to buy time, because I've got the equipment to do that. I ain't got the equipment to make lanterns.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But I've seen what it means to these veterans. You talk about I got a story. The only story I got, I want to help some veterans.
Mm-hmm.
That's all it boils down to. Anything I can do to do. And I'll tell you something, they ain't looking for a bunch of money. They ain't looking
No.
for handouts.
No.
They're looking for just a little bit of respect and appreciation. That's it.
Well, that's got to be really real to you. I mean, considering, your father and then coming back from Vietnam, all they want, like you say, is just an acknowledgement of what they've done.
They don't get it. And now it's improved a whole lot. There for a while, the government, if they had anything to say out loud on TV or anywhere else, they'd always start, "We appreciate the veterans." And the veterans turned against that mess because they knew it was a bunch of bull. It's just part of their mandatory speech, I think is all it was.
Yeah.
It's just lip service. God, that's so true, though.
But these veterans, they when you take an oath to God and country that you'll go anywhere in the world, anytime you're asked to go, and give up. Just like my dad, he gave up his whole everything. Well, there's a lot of people with him. There's about half of them got killed that day. There's about half of them didn't get killed that day. So everybody don't have to die to do, but you got.
Sure.
And some people go in the Army and they don't see a day of hostility or anything like that, but they committed to do that if they was asked to do that. That's the difference. I had a veteran one time told me I asked him if he was veterans. That fellow said, I think I may be a half a veteran. I said, wait a minute, what's that all about? And he said, well, I've just been in the reserves, and I ain't never. I said, partner, who do you think's fighting these wars today in Afghanistan and Iraq and all that?
Yeah.
I said, it's primarily
truth.
reservists. And I said, you took the same exact oath I took and all these other folks did. You just have to not be the one to get called to do that, but you
Right.
committed to do it. I said, ain't no such thing as half better to me. And I believe that.
Well, and a lot of your support roles, especially if you're deployed overseas, I mean, you're in every bit of danger as, someone who's out there in active combat, because you never know when something's going to get mortared or, I mean, yeah.
Well, it's just that's a group of people. If you got a buddy that's a veteran, that tie is a strong tie right there. They might not be floating around like the best buddies hugging each other's neck every day,
Yeah.
but it's
a lifelong bond.
A lot of deep appreciation right there among veterans.
Goodness.
But there ain't another group that I know of anywhere in this world that takes a oath and means it and has to stick to it. And
Yeah.
of course, there's a few veterans that's morons and they
Right.
don't do these.
Well, yeah,
you ain't gonna win them all.
There's stupid people everywhere, I reckon, in every group.
But I believe strong as I believe in breathing this lantern and what it represents and what we could do with it. I'm trying to find somebody to talk to me about getting it approved as a nice little symbol of appreciation for veterans. And you let that. You talk about a piece of merchandise. It's valuable without money.
Yeah.
It's like American flag. The American flag's not a Democrat or Republican. The American flag's American.
Sure.
That's what that lantern is. It ain't a party. It ain't a party deal.
Well, how far we've come from that to where we are now.
Oh, it's scary.
It's
It's
like we
sad.
can't. I
It's
mean,
really
and
sad.
and that's part of the reason nothing gets done in Washington.
Oh, sure it
It's
is.
because nobody can unite around anything. Anything.
No.
Not even being an American.
Well, I would argue that the Washington elite and the politicians unite around stuffing their bank accounts. That's about it. I mean, behind closed doors, they're all buddy. It's you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. Sure, they come out and we have the political theater where they argue about social issues or their different opinions on abortion. But really, at the end of the day, they're there to stuff their pockets, and that's it. That's both sides of the aisle.
I think you have to get people into politics that care. People,
Please.
but nobody within their right mind would want to go into that.
No,
I mean, you're just putting yourself in the line of fire and your family and everybody else. I mean, I know it. I registered to run for town council and got killed, and I wasn't even on the thing for 2 weeks. I had to get out of there.
You ain't gonna find me on that kind of stuff.
No.
no, me neither.
Well, and I wonder often too, and it's like with you, Robert. I mean, you've had so much influence and so much that's went on in this town is because of you, and you're just a businessman. How much do you really get done in politics?
Not much.
You don't get anything done.
No.
And then when the sad part about it is, I think too, is a lot of times, there's people, we had Vern Grindstaff on here. That's some of Josh's family. And Vern, we were talking to him about, he just got off of being a county commissioner.
He finally wised up.
Yeah, finally wised up. And he said, he told us, he said, one of the most frustrating things was to finally get there with every intention to do the right thing. And then you get on there and you realize your hands are tied in a lot of ways. So how do you even do it?
Well, and the general population really looks to government to solve their problems, and
They create more than they solve.
100%.
We've talked about a lot. You've mentioned, not knowing you were poor growing up. A lot of people didn't know they were poor until President Johnson come and told them they were.
Yeah, that's right. And now Biden just egging that on. All the money they give away.
Yeah.
Who's it helped? Not the ones who.
Certainly helped military contractors,
Well,
government contractors. It's helped them quite a bit.
Yeah. But it's, as far as, I wonder how much you disincentivize too. Because when people didn't know they were poor, you just worked.
yeah.
And then,
Didn't
yeah.
worry about doing that.
and then you came and told them they were and started giving them money. And then all of a sudden they're like, well, I ain't got to work.
Sure.
I'll just sit here.
And they do.
And it's like a sickness, like a metastasizing cancer sickness over people. I remember Bill Slagle, and I've mentioned this on here before too, but Bill Sagal told me one time that this is when, what's the name of the
PRC.
Yeah, PRC had come in, and they were just doing some footwork, just trying to get into the schools, and people that students that were in the vocational department and all that, and he said it was they would sit down with these students like, hey, what do you plan on doing after you get out of school? And he said at least 4 or 5 of them were like, well, I guess I'll just get my disability like mom and daddy.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, there you go. That's generational.
It is
sickness
generational.
is what
It's
that is.
generational. It
It'll
is.
take a while to get back from there.
Yeah.
But you know what I think of all the problems this country's got, it could all be solved very simply by just a little bit of attitude change.
Mm-hmm.
And you can do a lot of things, change attitudes. But I'll talk about this lantern the day I die, but I've seen this lantern change more attitudes.
Mm-hmm.
I've given it to Republicans, I've given it to Democrats, I've given it to people who don't even know about what politics is. And it changes them a little bit. It lets them know that they really and truly are appreciated. Well, you don't have to change 100% of the people to change the country.
Right.
Every election we've had from president elections years back, probably back to Ronald Reagan, every one of them that's won has won by maybe 1% or less. George Bush Jr., little George got hit by Chads.
Right.
Chads.
Yeah, I remember the pregnant Chads. Yeah.
I ain't never understood that. But
Me
he's a
neither.
hanging chatter, I guess.
I will never forget that.
But,
We all got an
well,
election in
simply,
paper.
There's over 150 million people voted this last time
Yeah.
in the country.
Yeah.
And Biden won by just barely over 75 million people.
Mm-hmm.
You can't get any more divided. You can't
No.
get any more divided than
No.
that. And it's not just a small divide. It's very wide. They hate each other.
Yeah.
You
That's
can't
the
go-
problem.
You can't go anywhere hating people. You can go to hell hating people, but you can't go anywhere else hating people. But you don't have to. And there's so many people. I wouldn't even try to change some of these folks. But you change anywhere from 5 to 10% of the people in their thought process. Mellow them a little bit, show them a little bit of appreciation, respect, and get them to where they'll talk to each other. 5% of the population now. You're not at 75 and 75. You're 80 and 70.
Mm-hmm.
You can change You can change the world by changing 5 or 10% of the people's thought process. And don't do it by promises. Don't do it. Just do it out of respect and true appreciation.
Yep.
But you can't say those without meaning it. And that's why I find
You just can't pay it lip service. It has to be sincere.
And people know if you're serious or not.
Yeah.
Sure.
Especially veterans.
Yeah.
They're not stupid.
No.
No.
What do you think's the greatest hallmark of a great leader, Robert?
Oh, you're getting into too many questions, man. I think you have to have somebody that cares. And if somebody cares, the rest of it work itself out, I think. Don't you think so?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. Goodness gracious.
Man.
We've shot the bull all we need to shoot.
Robert,
It can't go anywhere but
thank
down
you.
from here.
Thank you so much for your time. We
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it.
You have I want to do one thing. You guys chat for just 1 second. I got something to give you. I just left it in the car. I got to go grab it.
All
I
right.
hope it's Monday, don't you?
Yeah. Bring me some while you're at it. Yeah, I worked at in the hotel for a while. I loved it. I loved it up there. It was great.
That hotel stayed about full. For the
Yeah,
longest
it
time.
was the
And
entire
then
time I was
when
there.
all this stuff took place, and all of them went to China, it quit overnight because that's
Yeah.
where the business was.
Sure. Yeah, I remember. I mean, CSX workers. We had tons of them in there all the time. People, the Ferrari clubs. I loved it when the Ferrari club came to town because I'm a big car guy. And oh man, I remember coming into work one night and the parking lot was full of Ferraris, and I was like, "All right, this is pretty cool."
Yeah, there's a lot of things because there's the only place in town to do anything. Just
Sure.
about,
Sure. Yeah.
But this town's got potential. It could do.
It
Could do
does.
that again.
Yeah.
Easy with the right kind of situation.
100%. Oh man, I had an idea that that's what this was.
So I have a confession to make. Before Malin started their renovation of the
Coliseum?
Coliseum,
You're a thief, ain't you?
me and my girlfriend. Now, it was open. It wasn't like I went behind any fences and I just waltzed right in.
I hear you.
And the statute of limitations is probably gone now. But I was gonna give this to the Historical Society, Robert, but when I listened to that podcast, I thought to myself, this is your property. And you need to decide what
I know
you
what
want to
that
do
is.
with it. Yeah, I know you do. This. Here,
I found one end of it if you want to.
Yeah.
We'll get it all on camera.
That was up in the old press box. And I thought you might want that.
I'll be glad to take it.
That's awesome.
May have somewhere to put it one day. You know, we still got that Zamboni.
I know.
It's out there where you was at this morning.
I don't know if you've listened to that. Well, you said you hadn't listened to that podcast.
No, I'm not listening to it.
But the
I'm
gentleman
afraid to listen to it.
No, it's great.
the
It's
gentleman
really
on there
good.
made sure to correct that is not a Zamboni. That is a Holston ice resurfacer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I took him out there and showed it to him.
Speaking of whatever
Yeah.
that's like the what you were talking
Yeah,
about with
yeah.
Kleenex, same thing. Same
There's a
thing.
term for that. That's some kind of phenomenon. I don't remember what it's called, but there's when a brand becomes synonymous with the
Yeah, I
product.
can't remember what the word is either.
I
but,
can't either.
but Robert, thank you so much.
Thank you for
and
your
thank
time.
you for everything you've done for this community.
Yep.
I
Thank you for your
sincerely
service.
appreciate it, and thank you for your service.
Well, thank you.
It's sincere. And man, we appreciate it. We've wanted to get you on here for a long time, and it's a dream.
We
to
hope
hear
you
your
watch
story.
it. We hope you watch it.
I ain't never watched a YouTube, but is that what it is?
Yeah, it's gonna go on
I
YouTube.
have no idea how to get to that.
Well, we'll make sure I send it to Claudia, and she can get you hooked up.
Andy knows how to do it. Me and
Yeah.
him's out there together.
There you
Okay.
go.
We can get it to Andy.
How
and
long's it
Claudia.
gonna last?
I mean, we just however long we talked.
Yeah.
We're
Oh, Lord,
yeah,
this is-
Yep.
yeah.
We're at an hour 21.
Long form podcasts like this, are just conversations. Whatever.
Who,
We're at an hour 21 right
Hour
now.
21.
who listens to it?
We usually average 500 to 1,000 views per episode, somewhere
you
in
really?
there. Yeah, we sure do. Yeah, and we took a break for a while. This is the second episode that we've recorded since we've come back. We took about 2 months off.
Yep.
Season 2.
Season 2, yeah.
So this is the first one in season 2. So
Do
you're
me a
the
favor,
inaugural
Noah.
podcast.
Don't scoot that
Well, I hope you make
microphone.
some money on it.
It-
That's all I can say. I
Yes,
don't
a
know.
lot of noise. Well, so far I've done nothing but spend a bunch of money. It's been a lot like your endeavor into hockey. It's cost us a ton of money,
It's a labor of love.
but I love doing it. It's so much fun, and we've learned a ton.
And I mean, it's. I don't know. I thought I knew a lot about this community, and I thought I knew a lot about the people that I thought I knew. You get them on here and give them a few minutes to tell their story, and you learn a lot of things that you'd never envision you would.
I'd like to hear Mike Thomas on this.
Yeah,
You tell him that the next time.
yeah. We need to get Mike on here.
All right.
I enjoyed working with him for a long time.
He's pretty good. I'll claim him.
He's living as a fruitcake. He's
You hear
a
that,
good
Dad? You hear that?
No, I enjoyed working with him. I sure did. He's sharp, old boy.
He can be pretty sharp. I hope.
Yeah.
I got a little bit of
How's
it.
his church doing?
It's doing well. They're doing really
And
well.
tell me where it's at.
So, you know where the old Dellinger's Christian Bookstore building was?
Down on Lower Street?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
He bought that
He
building?
bought that building. They were intent on selling it to a church, and
Well,
Dad bought it.
That's good.
Well, I'll say Dad bought it. The church bought it.
Right.
So, but,
Hmm.
yeah, you'll have to go down.
How many you got going down there?
There's probably 150.
Are they really?
Yeah.
That's
Something
great.
like that. Yeah.
That's really
So-
good.
But Dad's kind of, I think his whole thing was just kind of keep it small. You know what I mean? Keep it to family, you know? And really have a group of
We go
close-knit
to,
people.
We go to Faith Baptist Church down, you know where Baxter's is?
Yeah.
It's
Mhm.
about a mile above Baxter. That's Donna's old.
Yep.
That's where she,
Mhm.
kind of where she grew up. She's always wanted to go back down there.
And how's Donna doing?
She's doing fine.
Is she?
Yeah.
She just bet. What's she doing now? Anything?
Trying to find ways for me to get out of the house. Oh, Donna, she works. She works all the time. She's doing.
Yeah.
She's something else. She's good. I wouldn't trade her, I don't think.
Oh, you're lucky. Donnie's a great
Yeah, we
woman.
were married 52 years.
Wow.
We got married April the 10th in 71 and started business Labor Day of 71. You talk about somebody wondering
Yeah.
what she got herself into.
I'm sure.
Well, that's a whole other thing we didn't talk about. Is how do you keep a marriage together and do everything that you did?
A lot of them won't.
Yeah.
She just happened to be one that wanted to stick, and thank goodness she did. But she put up with a whole lot from me. I know that. I don't know if I'd put up with that from her or not. I hope I would.
I think that's stuff. If I was my spouse, I wouldn't put up with me either.
God, I wouldn't me either.
I better get out of here. I got to go get ready to go down.
Robert,
Thank you, Robert.
Appreciate it.
Tell Mikey I said hi.
All righty, I'll do it. I'll do it.
TV boy here.
Here. Yeah.